Hello everybody, welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and I'm doing a box office preview for this upcoming weekend, which finally sees the release of Deadpool and Wolverine, which is right now predicted to have a monster opening weekend, looking to be the best opening weekend domestically of 2024, and also one of the largest worldwide, though of course we'll have that those numbers in by Sunday. We'll be able to compare those to the other films that come out this year. Regardless of that, as a rated R film, this is going to be a very, very strong opening weekend and a very, very strong overall box office performance for another Disney film. And I will say right now, based off of everything that we are seeing with these projections and based off of all of the very, very positive feedback that we're getting from people that have already seen the film, yeah, this movie's definitely going to make $1 billion and could be one of the biggest films of the year, with the only other film really that it has as competition being the film currently out by Disney, Inside Out 2. That film on track to get to $1.5, $1.6 billion, whereas this movie, I do think, will be a very healthy billion, but depending on how it does internationally is going to be really the big question mark that we don't have the answer to, how it holds in week 2 as a rated R movie that's going to obviously have a lot of upfront ticket sales, meaning that a lot of people, the vast majority, I would say, of the audience is going to be trying to see this movie opening weekend to try to avoid spoilers, and so ultimately that is the reason why you have typically MCU movies, films like that, have massive openings, but then also massive second weekend drop-offs. Will this movie be able to hold on to those audiences, get return viewers, and therefore actually have stronger holds down the road and do something that most of these bigger films aren't able to do? Again, if any film could do it, it would be this one, and we'll talk about that, and in addition to that, a plethora of other things. Before we're going any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button over an Aussie special rumble button as well. Also, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you have that bell hit so that way you know every time the video live stream goes live on the channel. So, as you can see, we have a few box office projection updates to talk about. We've been talking a little bit earlier this week, yesterday on the morning show, and also on the Tuesday night stream, the Monday night stream now, about these numbers coming in from Deadline, about close to 350 plus million worldwide debut. We now have the official estimates going into the domestic weekend. As of right now, Box Office Pro projecting it to get $180 to $200 million. Now, just as a frame of reference, Inside Out 2, a PG movie, was able to get an opening weekend of around $154 million domestic, a massive opening well above what the initial projections were for that film. Will we see Deadpool Wolverine over-project, or rather overperform? Will we see it underperform? Are the projections going to be higher or lower? It's going to be very fascinating to watch, though I do suspect that the Thursday numbers, once we get those tomorrow, right, the Thursday night premiere numbers that are going to be obviously accounted for today and then reported tomorrow, I think those are going to give us a very good indication. And do not be surprised if you see one of the biggest, if not the biggest, opening night performance for any film this year, and probably going forward as well. So very, very strong numbers being reported here by Box Office Pro. But even the likes of Box Office Theory are right now projecting a pinpoint forecast of $184.4 million, and actually a very strong hold for Twisters. That's the other big film that we have to talk about, of course, is that Twisters had also a very strong opening weekend, coming in well above, almost 20 million above where the initial projections were. That film been performing very well. It's been getting some very positive word of mouth from a lot of people. I myself am quite critical of it. I think the film is decent, but I can also see why a lot of people are still having fun with it, and it's right now projected, at least by Box Office Theory, to only be dropping about 53% in its second weekend. So I think that is going to be a pretty strong hold for that film, with films like Despicable Me 4 and Inside Out 2 continuing also to hold hold strong as well. Despicable Me 4 getting very close to $300 million domestic, should be able to easily get there, probably get close to $400 to $500 million domestic by the end of its run. And Inside Out 2 right now tracking towards $650 to $700 plus million in the domestic market. Longlegs also right now being projected to have very strong holds for the film that it is, right? Again, no one, I think, expected Longlegs to be making this much money, especially this far removed from its initial release. Typically, these horror thriller films from Neon, A24 type studios usually don't do this well. Longlegs seems to be holding quite well. But getting back to the Deadpool discussion, right? So obviously that 184 million domestic is very impressive. Let's go ahead and look up to what the range is currently being reported by Box Office Theory. So right now, the traditional tracking expectation, so this is the likes of Deadline and Hollywood Reporter and all these other places, right now they are projecting it to be $160+ million domestic opening, whereas the box office theory estimate, the range on that is between 171 and 203. So again, one of the things that they use in their metrics is not just the pre-sale tracking, but also some of the other factors like the number of premium screens that they are in, as far as the social medias are concerned. We'll actually go ahead and just read a couple of these things, right? It says, what are the key tracking factors and rationale? Deadpool Wolverine has maintained a generally consistent pace in pre-sale modeling, with other Marvel Cinematic Universe tentpoles. Entering Wednesday, the crossover comedy action sequel was trending 19% ahead of Thor: Love and Thunder, which was, of course, out in July 2022. That film also was one of those early signs the MCU was in very, very steep decline, which had a previous showing of 29 million and a 34% increase ahead of the Asgardians' True Friday earnings of 40.6. So if this, again, continues going forward, okay, so it says the preview numbers there was around $29 million. So again, suspect a higher number there for this movie. And the fact that it's tracking ahead and it's a rated R movie is what makes that even more impressive. Now, he also mentions things like Rotten Tomatoes and other things like that, which, again, could have an impact, could not have an impact. I think Rotten Tomatoes has definitely lost its appeal and lost its overall impactfulness at the box office overall, but still these projections are very, very good. 171 to 203. Again, I honestly think if I had to guess, it would be closer to that 180, but also, again, this gut feeling has that it's going to be over $200 million domestic, but again, I could see it being between 180 and $200 million. I'm going to go be actually seeing this film tonight with the wifey. She's a big fan of Deadpool, big fan of Ryan Reynolds as well. And so therefore we're going to go see that. And again, based off of this, everything that I'm seeing at my local theater, again, just comparing it to other films that we have seen, other films that we have been able to look at, like the pre-sales for, it's looking like this film is indeed living up to the hype, not just financially, but also based off of these early reviews that we're getting too. As I mentioned earlier, right, Deadline a couple days ago actually reported this, that they were right now projecting it to get 360 million globally. And the fact that we're already seeing many people saying that 160 that was being projected probably is a lowball number, and we're seeing others say 180 to 200 million dollars. Again, using those and just taking into account the increases there, yeah, we could see this film get north of 400 million dollars by the end of its run. Now, where would this film actually compare to some other films? Okay, so first let's look at the ticket sale comparisons. Okay, let's do a couple of breakdowns here. We talked about this on the Wednesday show yesterday, but just in case anyone missed that show, just going back to the older films and what the average, what were the estimated ticket sales for those films in their domestic opening, and also their adjusted for inflation domestic opening weekend numbers. As of right now, where the film is tracking, we can suspect that it will have the best overall box office numbers for the Deadpool franchise. And so again, very impressive to see that for a rated R film of 2024, of course, and I think that that is something that we're going to be having to look for. What's interesting to me, though, is that chances are more likely than not that Deadpool Wolverine will actually have less people going to see it than the first Deadpool film from back in 2016. So let's go ahead and look at these numbers. So let's say it does get to that $200 million plus number. And again, I think that there's a chance for it to do that, especially if the estimates are off, right? Now we've seen a lot of the box office estimates for these films that have been very, very large hits have oftentimes under-projected, right? Have gone below or underneath where the numbers actually ended up being. We saw this especially with Inside Out 2. Again, they were off by a large margin going into that weekend, right? No one really suspected that walk-up traffic, especially from the Hispanic community, for that film. That was, again, reported a lot by Deadline. So looking just at these numbers, if that $200 million mark is met by this newest release, that would be roughly 15.3 million tickets sold, which would be just about and a little bit more than what 2016's Deadpool was. But let's say instead it actually makes a little bit less. Let's say instead it makes 170, which is again that basically that minimum amount that people are projecting all across the board. That would be a much worse scenario as far as the comparisons between it and other films. Again, that would not impact its overall profitability. It would not impact whether it makes $1 billion or not. It would rather just be, I think, a real kind of that, that real world awakening, that splash of cold water that a lot of people in the box office media honestly need to start giving themselves and their readers, which is that as impressive as these numbers are, right, and as earth-shattering as that 170 would be, right, that would still be higher than the adjusted for inflation Deadpool 2016 and the adjusted for inflation Deadpool 2 of 153, but the ticket sales would actually be worse than even that of Deadpool 2, and of Deadpool 1 would be 2.3 million tickets less. And this is, I think, again, a problem that oftentimes in the media they're not really covering, is that you're having these major releases. And obviously there are these exceptions, very rarely, right? It's not a mistake that the biggest film right now of this year, Inside Out 2, had a massive opening that overshadowed the original by quite a lot. I mean, by an insane amount of money. Let's go back to Inside Out, right? So just remember, $154 million is, again, not only massively higher than the original film's $117 million adjusted, but then also you had an increase in ticket sales, right? 10.7 million tickets to 11.8. So the fact that you had that increase over time is something that oftentimes does not really happen in that capacity. You look at a franchise like Deadpool, and so to see that number, again, this would be actually a little bit more consistent with what we've typically seen, which is a drop-off in the overall number of people going to buy these tickets to see these movies. Now, again, this is just one of those things that I find quite interesting to look at. And if I had to guess, I would say it's probably going to be closer to 180, maybe 185. If that was the case, then it would actually be higher than the second film, but still not as high as the first film. Again, I just personally find that interesting. I do suspect that it'll probably be closer to $200 million, but we'll have to wait for those numbers to actually come in for that to actually be the case. And as you can see, right now, the budget for this film is being reported as being around $200 million. This is being reported right now by Variety. And so this is going to be a number for us to look at because, yes, is this film right now tracking to get to $1 billion? I would say it's almost a foregone conclusion at this point that this is going to be one of the most successful rated R films of all time, that this is going to be one of the fastest films to get to $1 billion. That is a rated R film. And I think that that's going to be something for us to definitely talk about and to mention. And it's also going to be a film that's going to make a lot of profit for Disney. But you go ahead and just compare these budgets, okay? And I think it's interesting, right? Look at how much more money they are spending to get about the same amount of money if you actually look at the overall raw totals, okay? They put $74 million into the first Deadpool, and they got to a $170 million opening weekend. $134 million into Deadpool 2 got $153. They're now putting $200 million in to this new film, right? This is a Disney release, so it actually makes sense that they're spending a crap ton more because Disney has a huge spending problem. And you notice, right, the amount of money really isn't matching up to the amount of money that they're putting in to their projects. It becomes even more apparent when you bring up this chart specifically because you'll notice, right, you have other comparisons that can absolutely be made, right? So, for instance, Joker, which had a budget adjusted for inflation of around $64 million, made $1.2 billion. The first Deadpool, $72 million when adjusted, according, again, these are using different metrics than the ones that I use. I use a more up-to-date metric for the adjustment for inflation. So if you're wondering why are those different, that is the reason why, because the numbers has their own system. $72 million put into the first Deadpool, $974, almost $1 billion got in return. $130 million put in Deadpool 2, $930 million in return. And even though this film right now, as I said, is tracking to be the biggest of the Deadpools, even when you adjust for inflation, right, to be the first Deadpool to get to $1 billion, I do think it is worth mentioning that Disney is continuing to show why they are in so much more financial straits when it comes to their theatrical releases. There's a reason why they lost close to $1 billion plus last year at the box office alone. One could argue, oh, they made that up at their parks, etc. You still never want to be a company that has one of your sectors losing $1 billion in a given year. They're going to make a lot of that up this year, no doubt about it. Okay, you have Inside Out 2, which is getting them hundreds of millions of dollars in net profit. This Deadpool Wolverine is absolutely going to give them hundreds of millions of dollars in net profit as well. But having that much larger price, that much larger amount of money being put in, when you're getting about the same amount that you got for a film like Joker, and again, obviously I know that's not Disney, but still, the fact that they were able to put in so little and get so much in return, I do think that this is something that Disney is going to be wanting to look at, because they need to start, I think, getting their financial, positions in order, right? To put it very kindly, as kindly as I can. Let's go ahead and go to the charts. We love doing charts here on OMB Reviews. We also love doing these updates here. So as I had mentioned before, with Twisters right now, with these projections for the weekend, yeah, we can suspect that because of it having a strong opening, and a strong week to hold. Let's go ahead and go back to the numbers here. Let's actually go ahead. Again, we'd like to do things live here. Keeps me as honest as I can be. And it's been holding pretty well, right? $146 million is where it is right now. So we'll see this film get north of 200, maybe worldwide 200 to $250 million. And if that is indeed the case, I think that we could definitely see this movie being quite a success. And the fact that it's getting close to that 250 and its break evens roughly around, right, the amount of money that we're going to see coming in this weekend. Again, that's using the more traditional model. That's the reason why I do suspect the film will probably have a good chance of making its money back. However, I will say this much. I don't think the profit margins on Twisters is going to be all that impressive. One of the big reasons why is because that massive budget that they had going into the movie is still very hard for them to make up. I think that right now the victory for Twisters is going to be that it's a film that was set to be a massive financial flop and is instead likely going to be a break-even small profit gainer for them. And again, that is definitely a much better position to be in, but it's also not nearly as good as you would be, or is not as good as being in the position of a film like, for instance, Inside Out 2, which is right now at $1.4 billion as of the last update, $368 million in actual net profits based off of the current metrics. And keeping in mind, right, that would pay for another film. That would pay for another Inside Out 2's entire budget and would also pay for the marketing costs associated with it as well. And this movie is not even done making its money back. And so, or rather, is not done making money at this point. And so I bring that up only to say Twisters right now is in a good financial position, but not nearly as good as one would hope, as a studio would hope, and as the studio would suspect. Longlegs, again, continuing to add to its profits, just insane profit margins for this movie based off of its budget. Fly Me to the Moon, still set to be a massive financial failure. Despicable Me 4 getting close to $600+ million at the box office. And again, is $1 billion still on the table for this movie? I would say it's still on the table. Again, there's still some metrics out there that we are waiting on. It's definitely going to be a lot harder for this movie to do so at this point in time. I will definitely say it'll be interesting to see what those numbers are for this weekend after we get those updates on Sunday with the added internationals, because Deadpool and Wolverine clearly is going to be taking up a massive amount of that market. There's just no way of denying that. There's no way of turning that down. One other interesting thing that we'll definitely be looking at is where does this film, right, Deadpool and Wolverine at least, compare to some of the other major releases this year. So as I said, right now it's getting close to tracking to $400 million in its global opening. Obviously, that would vastly overshadow the opening weekend of Inside Out 2. And let's see if we can actually just go back in time to see, are there any other films that we can even really compare it to that have a $360 to $400 million global opening weekend, even going over the last couple of years. Let's see, you get to Barbie, which had a $344 million global opening. So right now, Deadpool Wolverine is tracking to be a bigger global opening than Barbie. We know where Barbie ended up, right? Massive, well over $1 billion film in that case, and that was a PG-13 film. And so obviously that's going to be an interesting one to compare it to, especially if the holds are there. Fast 10 had $318 million, then it fell off a cliff. I don't suspect that that will happen with this movie. 377 Super Mario Brothers movie. So yeah, you actually have the potential for even the money coming in for Deadpool Wolverine, this rated R movie, to even surpass that of the global opening of the Super Mario Brothers. That would be also very impressive to see. And let's see, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, again, set to definitely be higher than that. You have to go back to Jurassic World Dominion, I believe. Obviously, I may have scanned over a couple, but close to $400 million was Jurassic World Dominion. Again, that movie, because of the fact that it kind of dropped off a cliff, it barely eked out $1 billion in that case. But that's also because of the fact that the movie really just had no holding power. It had no legs. Right now, based off of the early reactions, it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case for this Deadpool movie. Really, you have to go all the way back to, 2022, Doctor Strange 2 at $450 million global opening. We also know that this movie was very poorly received, dropped off a cliff, should have easily been $1 billion film, and ended up missing out on it because of that massive drop-off. And so those are just some comparisons to show you, why is it that I'm very confident that Deadpool and Wolverine will be $1 billion film? It's because those are the number of comparisons that we're kind of looking at here. You add to that the fact that it's getting this kind of opening as a rated R movie, and hopefully you can see as to why I think the chances of this film not just being a massive success in its global opening, but also down the line, is very much a likely possibility. And again, all those other caveats are still there. Based off of whatever that opening weekend is domestically, could end up being one where it matches the success of the first film's ticket sales or comes in underneath it. So it'll be interesting to see where it falls there, but also where it falls into the rest of this year. Will it be able to potentially have the type of total box office take that we're seeing for the likes of a movie like Inside Out 2? Again, I have some doubts about that at this point in time, because even though the massive opening weekend is expected here, even much bigger, much larger than what we had earlier in the year for Inside Out 2. Inside Out 2 is a kids movie. Kids movies typically have very strong holds. We've been tracking that every single week, and we are looking at that film, right, Inside Out 2, having just massive amounts of money across the world, right? $600+ million here in the domestic market, $816 million being reported internationally. And that's without China's numbers there. I don't know if we're going to get that same type of international praise for this movie, but we'll have to wait and see. What are y'all's thoughts? Do you think that Deadpool and Wolverine is going to be a billion-dollar film? Do you think it's going to be the biggest box office for this year as far as its opening is concerned? I think that is very likely going to happen. Again, just the fact that you had to go back all the way to basically 2022 to get even somewhere close to that $400+ million range, which right now is where we can see Deadpool being. I think that says quite a bit. Regardless of any of that, it's going to be as successful, if not more successful, than the more recent MCU fare. And because this is getting a lot higher praise than recent MCU fare, and because it's being a comedy, likely will have a much longer run at the box office as far as success is concerned. Yeah, I think that all of the equations are there. I think that all of the factors that you need for a huge, financial successful film are there as well. But let me know your thoughts about this and anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, loud that fire button over on Aussie, smash the rumble button as well. I'll be going to see Deadpool Wolverine tonight with the wifey, so make sure that you follow me over on Critic List, as we will be posting our reviews over there probably as soon as least for me, as soon as I get home. And make sure to check that out. Might try to record a video review if I can, but obviously those are a little bit harder to do even during this summertime. You guys are amazing. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my Patreon, Subscribe Star, Locals, and YouTube members who are at the Chosen of Valhalla level. Starting off with my Patreon supporters, Father Luca Illich, Rosetta Allen, check out her YouTube channel, which is Eagle Rider, and Miss Martin Muses, check out her YouTube channel by the same name. To my Subscribe Star Chosen members, Matt317, check out his Twitch channel by the same name, and also the K-Man, check him out at xtheboundaries.co, and a shout out also to my one Chosen of Valhalla YouTube member, Mr. Roy. Thank you again for being so much of a huge supporter of the channel. And to every one of my chosen members, if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, or if you want access to things like giveaways of Blu-rays, 4Ks, etc., and access to an exclusive podcast bonus material for members, check out the links in the video description below for all of those details. You guys are amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, a blessed month of the Sacred Heart, and as always, God bless.